Hey everyone, Kathy the Vegan Prepper here to bring you a video. I am very excited to bring you all about the ethics of veganism and why I think they might be more complicated than most people think at first glance. And then, also because I really want to rip the band-aid off early in this channel to sort of say exactly what my stance is on certain things. Because I know by the end of this video, there's probably going to be people who are saying, you're not a real vegan. And you know what? That's fine with me. I consider myself an ethical vegan. I'm not going to be a blind, dogmatic vegan any more than I'm a blind, dogmatic Christian. I don't believe in blindly following dogmatic rules just to be part of somebody's club in any area of my life, whether it's my faith or my politics or my veganism. So, that's what it is from my heart. I'm not trying to be part of this, extreme vegan club. This is a choice that is very personal to me, and I'll get into that just a little bit. But for the most part, I want to keep it moving because I think every single one of these things that I'm going to discuss could potentially be its own entire video series. I mean, really, these are like thick topics, deep subjects. But I'm going to try to cover just like the high bullet points. And then later we may be able to come back and make some more videos for further discussion in case anybody is interested. But I feel like it's really important to lay these issues out. And then also, fair warning, my daughter did not go down for her nap today. I've been trying to film this video for 4 days, and I decided today is the day. No matter what happens, she may show up. Sorry in advance if she does, and YouTube turns off the comments. I will go make a post on my channel page where you can comment and we can discuss over there. All right, all that out of the way, now let's get into it. So I said, for instance, my faith. I talked about my faith briefly. I am a Christian. I consider myself a very devout Christian. It's a deeply personal and large part of my life, my faith, every single day. And I hope it makes me a better person. And it's actually one of my favorite quotes is, if your faith makes you a, we'll say, butthole, your faith makes you a butthole, you're doing it wrong. So that's my 2 cents on that subject. But, sort of move throughout my life with grace and understanding and love for all people, because that's what I believe we are here for. Love God, love others, and love ourselves. So as a Christian, I'm just going to cover this briefly, and don't worry, this is not going to be a religious video by any means. I know some people really don't like that, and, I will not talk about this for too long. I'm only bringing it up because in relation specifically to veganism, there is kind of like a Christian, I think, aversion to it. It's kind of funny. I've even had some really interesting encounters with people at my church. And, my church is incredible. And it is full of incredible and amazing people, but every place has its, I don't know, like people, and even these people I think are well-meaning. I hope. I hope they are. I like to try to think they are. But there's people that are just sort of extreme and really get threatened by the idea of veganism, also probably not understanding where I'm coming from. And that is fine. We don't have to get into that. But yeah, it's been interesting. Mainly surrounding the Christian kind of, I don't know if it's really a doctrine, but this idea of dominion, right? That we are created in the image of God, which I believe is true. We were given dominion. I also believe that's true. And so what does that mean? So does dominion mean that we can just stick the earth under our thumb and indiscriminately destroy it to prove that we are the boss of it? Or is it about stewardship? And I really believe it's about stewardship. I believe that when we're given a position, there is a purpose. If there's a position, there is a purpose. It's because we have a responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility, right? To quote Spider-Man, the movie, oh my gosh, I just blanked on Spider-Man's uncle's name. I'm like, see, now you're gonna think I'm not even a real nerd, and that really upsets me because I want to be part of that club. But anyway, you can comment down below and tell me who's Spider-Man's uncle. I'm gonna remember as soon as I stop filming. But anyway, great power comes great responsibility, and that's why it exists. That's why we were given that position to exercise a responsibility, which I believe ties back into the original job, which was to tend and to keep it, meaning protect and preserve the original design. And that's what I really believe that Dominion is supposed to be about. But also, Dominion is a huge part of why I believe our faith has so much power, that what we believe is, measured out to us. And again, that is definitely kind of rabbit trailing off into more of a Christian topic, so I'm not going to go there, but I feel like I have to address that since I brought up the Christianity thing and that question, because I know that that's a huge roadblock to a lot of Christians. Like, I don't know, like, but we have dominion. And it's like, yeah, but I don't know, that doesn't like give you carte blanche to do whatever the heck you want to the planet and to these creatures that God has made. Now, with that being said, here's another hot button topic. Do I believe that it is a sin to eat meat or to eat animals, really? The truth is, no, I don't believe it is a sin. However, just because it's not a sin doesn't mean that it's beneficial to us. Just like there's a verse in the Bible where Paul says all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial. And I think, honestly, the science has shown over and over and over again that our ideal diet, the one that is most beneficial to us, is a plant-based diet. And I feel like I've seen that in my body over and over and over again as well. And I'll have to do another video all about health where I discuss my latest blood results, my blood test results, and how great they were, especially considering my size. But even not considering my size, I have amazing markers. I think there's a lot of skinny people out there who would kill for the numbers that I got. Anyway, I didn't have to kill anything for my numbers though. Okay, all right, that's it. So let's move on from that. And also, because this is the Vegan Prepper channel, just as a quick discussion, you're a vegan prepper, kind of into survivalism. I'm wanting to get more and more into survivalism. It's a huge motivation of why I'm wanting to get fit. I want to learn all of the bushcraft and all of that stuff. Like I'm like binging so many videos about this stuff, and I really want to do that. So in a survival situation, would my family eat animal products or eat meat? Honestly, if we had no other option, yeah, of course we would, because it's a survival situation. That's a completely different set of circumstances to what we are living in now. I could go as far as to ask you or ask whoever's watching a question. I would say, my notes actually say cannibalism, because isn't cannibalism something that happens in extreme survival situations? But I don't think we even have to go that far. What about like a dog or say a rat? If you were in some extreme survival situation, would you not eat whatever was available to you? Not even going as far as cannibalism. Aren't there certain animals that you would never consider eating unless you were in a certain situation? So I feel like it's a moot point. It is. So like, even as an omnivore, potentially, if you're watching as an omnivore, you have certain animals that you would never consider eating unless you were in a survival situation. And so for me as a vegan, I would not consider eating any animals unless I was in a survival situation. So I don't think that it's really a question. I don't think that means I'm not really a vegan. I think it just means that all of us would make different choices if we had to. Thank God we are not in that situation right now. So that doesn't mean that because you would do that in that situation, that you need to go practice killing dogs and cooking them over a fire and eat them now so that you know how to do it when you're in the woods somewhere. And that's another whole, but here's the vegan coming out of me, where I find myself so angry watching these survival shows because almost every single one of them features the pointless, senseless killing of an animal for entertainment. They kill an animal for the sake of a TV show. When they've got, camera crews there and everything, you did not have to kill that creature on that show and cook it just because you're doing a TV show about survivalism. You are not really surviving. You didn't have to kill that creature. Okay, there we go. My vegan came out. So it's okay. See, I have a little bit of it in me. That is definitely, as where I get angry and I almost want to restart this, but I think I'll go ahead and leave it because that is definitely what's in my heart and that is my opinion when I watch those things. It's like, anyway, I'm not going to go any more into that. So we've covered, okay, dominion and survivalism and extreme situations. And so I want to go ahead and quickly discuss things like leather, wool, and beeswax and honey. So these are kinds of things that, again, I think are not 100% cut and dry. So I'm going to start with leather because that one probably seems like the easiest one to say, absolutely not. You should never use leather if you're a vegan because leather is, the skin of a dead animal. And that is absolutely true. I would say yes. For like 99% of the time, I will never choose to purchase a leather item brand new, okay? Which I will say makes it extremely difficult to find backpacks, purses. Like you'll find a canvas backpack and then there's stupid freaking leather zipper pulls. Why? Okay, but however, I believe there are certain situations, again, kind of more of an extreme situation where you would need to purchase a new leather item. And I have right here a prop. It is the prop that I want to show you. These are my husband's vegan work boots, which he purchased because he is vegan. And he is a Harley Davidson technician. He's around extremely hot engines, hot parts very often, but he bought vegan work boots as a means of exercising his ethics, trying not to make a choice that he didn't want to make because he does not want to purchase a leather boot. But wait for it. He was cutting a bolt one day, and that bolt, I don't know if you can imagine, you're using a saw on a bolt, and that bolt becomes red hot, and it flew off of the motorcycle. Can you see that? It went straight through his shoe. It hit his sock. Thank God it didn't actually hit his foot. So by the time it melted through his shoe and hit his sock, it actually hit his sock miraculously, thank you Jesus, directly in between two of his toes. Or else he would have gotten a serious and severe burn on his foot because of that. So suffice to say, he's in an old pair of leather work boots now, which have extremely worn down soles, and the next pair of work boots that he purchases will be leather because that is what's required to protect himself. It's an extreme situation. This is not a normal thing. If they make some incredibly tough vegan product that can be guaranteed to protect him in his place of work with hot machinery and all of that stuff, then okay, fine. We will look into that option. All right. But for now, no, he has to be safe. So he's going to be purchasing a pair of leather work boots. And that's just the way that it is. Okay. And actually I am the one who is after him to purchase the leather work boots. He doesn't want to do it. He's very stubborn. He's very like, I don't want to purchase. And I'm like, you have to, you just have to. So that is kind of, again, an extreme situation, but one where the moral choice is, it is sad, but again, it's more of an extreme situation. And again, yeah, thank God that wasn't just a little bit further over, or yeah, he would have had a severe burn. Anyway, so that's the situation on that. And then also I want to touch on really fast the current leather items that we own. Like I currently own some leather boots, which I will never purchase leather boots again for myself because I'm not in a situation where I need protection that extreme for my feet. However, I'm not going to throw something away and send it to a landfill just because it is not something that I would purchase now. So that's kind of where you have that overlap of vegan for the animals and vegan for the environment. And that's really, for me personally, those are kind of the scales that I'm weighing when I'm making a lot of these decisions, because a huge part of me is vegan for the planet. Because again, I feel like it's my duty to be a good steward of this world. And the vegan options are not always the best option in that regard, in my opinion. Okay. So like, and also like the zero waste part of me, it's like, no, I'm not just going to throw something away. So it's like environment and zero waste. And like, there's so many things. And this is kind of what I'm talking about. These questions are more complicated, I think, than they seem at first. And so, yes, that was leather. And I'm sure there's more that could be said, but I'm gonna move on. Now, wool. Let's discuss wool. I will no longer ever purchase mass-produced wool yarn. It's just not gonna happen. However, my baby, she's my sweet baby. Her baby blanket is wool, and I'm not gonna change it. I knit it for her from yarn I had before. But honestly, had I a choice, if I had to make that choice again now, and I needed, like, I have a yarn stash, because I've been a knitter, a crocheter since I was like 6, and a knitter for 10 or 15 years. I honestly don't remember how long it's been. It's been a really long time I've been a knitter. And obviously a really long time I've been a crocheter. And so I have a stash built up. And then that kind of comes back to that thing where I'm not going to throw it away just because I would no longer purchase it. So I'm fortunate enough that I have that stash. So if I needed to make a wool item, I have some wool already. But I would not choose to purchase these things anymore. If you want to research what is done to sheep in these large scale operations, especially merino sheep, and what happens to them, it's very sad. And I'm not going to get into it, but that's the reason I've made that ethical decision to no longer purchase wool yarn. And all the new yarn I purchase now, I don't even do acrylic because it's plastic. I'm doing cotton or linen or hemp. Okay, do you want some cereal? Yeah? Okay, get me your bowl then, please. See, that's what I'm talking about. So the new purchases that I'm making line up with my ideals. And so, however, what are the exceptions? Like I said, if I absolutely had to, wool is what I would purchase to make a blanket for my child, because wool in and of itself has several properties that make it a better and safer choice as something for children. Give me just a second. Number one safety thing being the fact that if a fire starts nearby, and even if a fire gets onto that blanket, the second the fire is removed, that blanket or that wool will cease to burn. Wool is an incredible natural material. It also retains its heat when it's wet, makes it ideal for survival type situations, for your socks, for whatever, for your hat, for, you know, there's just so many things about wool that make it a very precious natural material. And as far as I'm concerned, the options otherwise, especially any of the synthetically made vegan options, I feel like that's not really an option. So you're essentially replacing something that is natural, which would biodegrade, with something that is plastic that will never biodegrade. And I feel like this is a much worse choice for the earth. And for me personally, I can choose to purchase, if I ever want to purchase wool again. I am very fortunate that locally we have a lot of people who keep sheep, and especially in my area, you can see that they are taken care of. And for us, it is there's no risk to them of dying, of freezing to death because their coat gets taken too soon, which is something that happens to sheep elsewhere in the world. In fact, they have more of a risk of dying if they're not sheared because of how extremely hot it gets here during summer, and then we have a really mild climate otherwise. And so for me, ethically speaking, sort of weighing those scales, if I'm going to ever purchase wool for any reason, I would be purchasing it from those local sheep growers, or sheep tenders or whatever. These people who really treat their sheep like their pets, and it doesn't hurt them at all to be shaved for their wool. And I understand that there's somebody out there who's going to be like, oh, well, that means you're not a real vegan because it's an animal, and blah, 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 and animals are not ours to wear, and animals are not ours. You know, that's like where it gets kind of more extreme. And as far as I am concerned, there is a symbiotic relationship that happens between humans and animals on many different levels. And even with veganic farming, people wanting to do veganic farming, and like that's all well and good. However, there is literally no such thing in nature as a vegan ecosystem. Every ecosystem contains animals. It contains the product of animal. Animals are part of it. And I feel like going forward for the most sustainable world, animals being part of our ecosystem again is a huge necessity. So for me, if I ever got like a homestead or I had, and again, this is a whole other conversation. All right, I'm going to keep this short. If I got my own land, I probably would rescue chickens, and I would not take their eggs because I don't want them to go through the pain and calcium deficiency and all that of laying eggs. But what I would love is to have them to be the processors of my kitchen scraps and to be able to use what manure they leave in my garden to nourish my soil, because it's an extremely important part of ecosystems is, retaining and using animal matter. But like, I would take care of them, and that's kind of what I would be getting from them. And then their use in dealing with pests in the garden. There's actually whole books dedicated to creating chicken gardens, and that's probably what I would end up doing if I lived in a more rural area. But that's not an option for me right now. So currently I am a veganic grower because I can't guarantee that what I purchase at the store would have been ethically produced. It is almost certainly the produce of the meat and dairy and egg industry. Is, anytime you see manure, it's probably from animals who are not being treated well. And anyway, so I'm not doing that now, but in my own idea of the future, I might do that. And then also I might get my own sheep, and I might raise my own sheep for wool and nothing else. No meat, no nothing. Actually, wool sheep are different from meat sheep. It's a whole other conversation. Like I said, these are things that I have thought about and researched and looked into, and it's true. And so yeah, this is again where a lot of people are like, you're not a real vegan. Okay, fine. I still consider myself a real vegan. I would question vegans who have dogs. Why do you have a dog? Are you getting emotional support from that dog? Do you have a relationship with that dog? You get something out of that relationship at all? And I would say, well, then that dog does not exist to be your emotional support. That dog does not exist to be, what you get love from. It's ridiculous. If you take it far enough on any one of these points, you can go so far and it just gets so stupid. So yeah, like, I don't know. Anyway, okay. I think I've covered wool. And now the very final thing, good. It's a lot longer than I wanted it to be already, but we'll go ahead and get into beeswax and honey. Believe me, I have read so many things about honey and beeswax, and I choose to continue to use both of these things. Ideally, in my future, I would love to have my own beehives so that I can be absolutely sure that I'm taking care of them and never taking more than is safe for the hive. And there's actually some places where it's beneficial to the hive to take the honey, and it's beneficial to the hive to do things like that. So anyway, this is very deep beekeeping research that people can do if they so desire. But for now, I am using locally sourced beeswax and honey for medicinal purposes only in my home. So when I make herbal syrups or oxymels, things like that we use medicinally, I don't cook with honey or bake with it. If I'm baking with something, I'm using maple syrup. Maybe sometimes agave nectar, but maple syrup is my next choice, or my first choice. Agave is kind of really way too processed, and so I'd rather have maple syrup. It is also a very natural, plant-based, beautiful thing. But yes, for medicinal purposes, I'm using honey and I'm using beeswax. Beeswax is not strictly medicinal. I use beeswax candles because they don't pollute the air. But again, a lot of this has to do with the fact that this is a very natural material. It does not require any processing whatsoever. The beeswax that I use and I get comes straight from the local grower, straight from that local hive. It comes to me in a big block, And it even still has, like, it can have like weirdness in it. And it even has honey in it because it's a completely unrefined product. And I feel like this is where, again, the whole thing with the environmentalism versus the animal thing, and it's like, technically candelilla wax exists, carnauba wax, or those, but like one of those I remember reading is like not technically vegan, or was it another thing I was reading about? Crap, I'm getting something straight. There's something that is vegan because it comes from a tree, but it isn't really vegan because some bug is killed when they get the sap off the tree. And I'm like, oh my gosh, people, I just like, I can't even with all of this. Like, but it's like, so both of these things, they have to be flown from really far away in the world, on a plane or something. I'm talking about going like maybe 3 miles away from my house to get beeswax. Anyway, it's not processed. All it's done is it's melted. It's just taken and it's melted into a form that they then give to me. But that is it. And I'm like, this natural material, which has so many incredible properties. It is waterproof, but still breathable. It moistens and conditions, and it condition, like when you're putting it into a salve, it forms a protective layer to keep the medicine in. And there's just like so many things. Honey in and of itself, because it's local and it's raw, is good for allergies. I know there's no technical scientific data to back that up, but look at my family. As soon as I started using honey for my husband and my sons, or my son, their allergies started going away. And it was like, they used to have to be on allergy shots before. This wasn't like just a little thing. This was like a major issue that they used to have in their lives, and it's gone now. And I mean, things like that, like, you're telling me that a spoonful of honey is worse than some chemical produced by some greedy and horrible pharmaceutical company. Okay. See, the ethics, like they war with each other, and I feel like it's not so cut and dry. It's not so simple. So I can't keep talking because it's going to be way too long and nobody's ever going to watch it. I probably should have broken this up into multiple things. But that's kind of like I said, I'm just going to have to leave it there. And then hopefully I've sort of brought, I don't know if I brought any clarity or if I've just brought more confusion, because that's what I'm saying. Like you can't just say cut and dry, this is always 100% wrong, always. And then also, like, on a certain level, I'm waiting if I should say something. Yeah, I'm just gonna say it. My veganism, it's kind of got to stop at bugs. I'm sorry, it just does. Like, there is a difference between a bug and other creatures. There just is. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not saying I'm going to be standing over an anthill with a magnifying glass or crushing something because it's fun. If we find, a spider in the house, we let it go. If, things like that. But like in my garden, if I want my food, I have to spray neem oil on certain things. I plant specific plants to draw predators to my garden, to kill the pests in my garden. Like, I try for the most part to let the ecosystem work. But if I find a caterpillar, or if I find a squash bug, that's instant death in my yard for that creature. And I know that probably sounds horrible. And again, you're not really vegan and it's like, but like, I will lose my entire crop if I let even one of these bugs go free. I don't know if you can like that book, like, as a funny thing, it's like that book, The Hungry Caterpillar. That's not cute. That is my nightmare, okay, in my garden. So this is, again, not like some cut and dry thing. And so, yeah, that's just, I guess, where I stand. I'm sure I'm always open to change my mind. Like, I might get some new information that means, like, I absolutely cannot ever do something ever again or something. But for me, again, it's like I gotta weigh all these things, and for me, environmentalism sometimes means that I make a choice that uses an animal product, and that's just sort of the way that it goes. And I guess that's all here, and we're gonna say goodbye. So here's my sweet baby. And yeah, so I guess let's go ahead and have a conversation. I'm sure that some people have something to say. What were you making that face for? Anyway, But yes, as always, I hope the rest of your day is good and your life stays wonderful. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you for listening. And yeah, let's go ahead and talk about some stuff. Okay, talk to you later. Bye.